Vice President Kamala Harris may have just had her worst performance yet. I know there have been some shocking performances in recent weeks. Now she's finally started doing some tough interviews, but this performance at CNN's town hall has to be one of her worst performances of the campaign so far.
What weaknesses do you bring to the table, and how do you plan to overcome them while you're in office?
That's a great question, Joe. Well, I am certainly not perfect, so let's start there. And I think that perhaps a weakness, some would say, but I actually think it's a strength, is I really do value having a team of very smart people around me who bring to my decision-making process different perspectives. My team will tell you, I am constantly saying, let's kick the tire on that. Let's kick the tires on it.
Look, you may like Kamala Harris, but her skills really fall short when it comes to speaking off script to an audience. Now, the presidential hopeful took part in CNN's town hall in Pennsylvania on Wednesday, which was moderated by Anderson Cooper. And you be the judge if you think this answer was convincing.
Some voters, though, might ask, you've been in the White House for 4 years, you were vice president, not the president, but why wasn't any of that done for the last 4 years?
Well, there was a lot that was done, but there's more to do, Anderson. And I'm pointing out things that need to be done, that haven't been done, but need to be done.
Kamala Harris was asked again the obvious question, how will her administration be different? Something she still can't communicate effectively.
I represent a new generation of leadership on a number of issues and believe that we have to actually take new approaches. For example, what we talked about in terms of housing. My experience that leads to that priority includes what I did to take on the big banks around the foreclosure crisis when I brought billions of dollars to homeowners that were the subject of predatory lending. I know what home ownership means to the American people, not to mention what it meant to my mother, who worked very hard and saved up so that by the time I was a teenager, she was able to buy our first home. I bring to it my experience actually taking care of my mother when she was sick, and it was, as it turned out, dying from cancer. And so I know what it means and have the experience of taking care of an elderly relative, and I have raised children. And so I bring to my priorities, and will as president, a new approach and a new idea, frankly, about what we need to do to deal with the sandwich generation.
Another question the vice president should have been prepared for is why the crisis at the southern border has escalated under her leadership, and if Donald Trump was wrong for his plans to build a wall.
Under Donald Trump, you criticized the wall more than 50 times. You called it stupid, useless, and a medieval vanity project. Is a border wall stupid?
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump and that border wall. So remember, Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it? Come on, they didn't. How much of that wall did he build? I think the last number I saw was about 2%. And then when it came time for him to do a photo op, you know where he did it? In the part of the wall that President Obama built.
But you're agreeing to a bill that would earmark $650 million to continue building that wall.
I pledge that I am going to bring forward that bipartisan bill to further strengthen and secure our border. Yes, I am. And I'm going to work across the aisle to pass a comprehensive bill that deals with a broken immigration system. I think Jackson's question, part of it was to acknowledge that America has always had migration, but there needs to be a legal process for it. People have to earn it. Right. And that's the point that I think is the most important point that can be made, which is we need a president who is grounded in common sense and practical outcomes. Like, let's just fix this thing. Let's just fix it. Why is there any ideological perspective on this? Let's just fix the problem.
To fix the problem, you're doing this compromise bill. It does call for $650 million that was earmarked under Trump to actually still go to build the wall.
I'm not afraid of good ideas where they occur.
So you don't think it's stupid anymore?
I think what he did and how he did it did not make much sense, because he actually didn't do much of anything. I just talked about that wall, right? We just talked about it. He didn't actually do much of anything.
But you do want to build some wall.
I want to strengthen our border.
Kamala Harris and the Democrats are obsessed with Donald Trump. The Democrats have been in power for 12 out of the last 16 years, but all they want to do is blame every problem on Donald Trump. And is that because he's a genuine threat to democracy like they say he is, or because he's a threat to their power? Kamala Harris has had every opportunity to turn down the heat on the rhetoric in this campaign, but should rather convince Americans that the Republican candidate is someone we should all fear.
Do you believe Donald Trump is anti-Semitic?
I believe Donald Trump is a danger to the well-being and security of America.
Earlier in the day, Kamala Harris was speaking about comparisons being drawn between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. Commentator Alex Stein joined Power Hour to give his analysis. Joining us now is comedian Alex Stein. Alex, great to see you. Let's get straight into the comments from the woman who is no longer the favourite to win this election. Here she is.
This is a window into who Donald Trump really is, from the people who know him best, from the people who worked with him side by side in the Oval Office and in the Situation Room. And it is clear from John Kelly's words that Donald Trump is someone who, I quote, certainly falls into the general definition of fascist.
Alex, does this sound like someone who believes they can win the election because they're the best person to lead or because they have the best policies? Or actually, is it someone who will go to extreme lengths to smear their opponent?
Well, I mean, obviously it's the latter. Kamala Harris will compare Trump to Hitler, which they think that what they're doing is trying to demonize Hitler. Excuse me. What they think they're doing, they're trying to demonize Donald Trump, but they're humanizing Hitler, who wanted to mass exterminate millions of people. Yeah. And Donald Trump doesn't want to do that. Donald Trump wants to save people. He didn't start any wars when he was president. So it's absolutely absurd how they use this rhetoric and compare him to the worst human being in world history, when Donald Trump loves America and he loves this country. And Kamala Harris, I cannot say the same for her. I don't think she loves America like Donald Trump does.
Well said. Kamala Harris is doing interviews now really because she has to. She can't hide anymore. And she was asked by NBC News why she's performing so poorly with men. Let's take a listen.
Right now, there is a big gender gap in this race. Fewer men support you right now than they did President Biden. Some of your allies have suggested there's sexism at play. I wonder, do you think there is sexism at play here?
Let me just tell you something. You've come to my events, and you will see there are men and women at those events, whether it be small events or events with 10,000 people.
Alex, why is she performing so badly with men?
Well, because she's untalented. It has nothing to do with the fact that she's a female. It's just that, you look at her history and where she got to, become the attorney general, her relationships with men. I mean, some people here in America create a narrative that she might have used her sexuality to make it. And a lot of men are probably frustrated with that because she was literally chosen as a DEI candidate because she was an African-American woman. So instead of having a meritocracy here in this country, we're choosing the second most powerful person in the country based on their skin color. So I can see why a lot of men are frustrated, especially people that think that they could never be eligible for that position because they are a man. So I think it's rightfully so that a lot of men are not on Kamala Harris's side. I'm not surprised one bit. And we kind of saw this with Hillary Clinton in 2016, but I think it's much worse with Kamala Harris.
Yeah. Let's look at the campaign funding, because what I find amazing is that Kamala Harris's campaign is starting to dive at the moment, yet her campaign has reportedly raised more than 3 times as much as Donald Trump's just in September, and her combined campaign and affiliated groups has passed the $1 billion mark. Alex, what does that tell you about the amount of money that is being raised and that is being spent, and why it's just not working for Kamala Harris?
Well, it's not working for her, but here in Texas, Ted Cruz is in a tough race with Colin Allred, and Colin Allred has gotten over $11 million compared to Ted Cruz's $8.5 million from all foreign and out-of-state donors. So all these people are throwing money behind Kamala Harris. It's not necessarily going to be the difference that makes her win. So these people are doing whatever they can. This is the fourth quarter. This is her Hail Mary. And I really hope the American people show up and do not elect a woman that wasn't even elected by her own party. Remember, remember, there was no primary. They just elected her by themselves. They didn't actually go out there and vote. There was no civic duty. People did not get to put in their opinion on whether or not she should be the presidential candidate. So I think that's made a lot of people frustrated. Then obviously her policies when it comes to Israel and Palestine and the war in Ukraine, people are getting very frustrated. So they can spend as much money as they want. It's not going to change the narrative this late in the game.
That's right. And people didn't like her when she was vice president, when Joe Biden was still running to be re-elected. And yeah, they're starting to come to the same conclusion. Now it's getting to the pointy end of this campaign. Let's look at some of the opinion pieces we're seeing come out now. Multiple outlets are writing about how the Harris campaign is just falling apart. This one from David Marcus at Fox News says, love him or hate him or ignore him, Donald Trump is who he is. And the voters know that's what they would be getting. But Kamala Harris remains an enigma, a vague promise of full and of high and hearty words, and almost a ghost. And ghosts don't win elections, and that is exactly why Kamala Harris is losing in Pennsylvania. What do you make of that assessment, Alex?
Well, Gabriella, you nailed it. I mean, Donald Trump is who he is. He's a wealthy guy, became a billionaire because he's a very shrewd businessman. But when you ask Kamala Harris about her upbringing, she just repeats the same moniker. Well, I came from a middle-class family. Well, yeah, that was a middle-class family living in Canada. So she's just full of it. And the American people know that. And that's what's so frustrating is that she is so fake. She's such a fraud. And you know, if she somehow wins, which I do not think is going to happen, this country is going to be heading in not just the wrong direction, but the country that as you know it today, we're going to go and get into multiple wars. We're going to be, our economy is going to collapse. People are not going to be able to afford a home. I mean, the middle class will be deleted if Kamala Harris becomes president of the United States of America.
You know, the only person I think who's performing worse than Kamala Harris in this campaign is her running mate, and that is Tim Waltz. And we just know he's been performing terribly. This is his response as to why he lost the debate.
I said, one thing is I told people, I said, I'm not that great a debater. I was a school teacher, so I'm trained to answer questions. You know, that's not a good debating skill.
I told people, Alex, just how damaging has Tim Waltz been to Kamala Harris's campaign?
Well, Kamala Harris got in trouble for lying about working at McDonald's, so she had stolen Mick Valor, but he actually had stolen valor. He said that he carried weapons and fought in the Middle East when he was really just in Europe. So he's a liar. He's been caught lying multiple times. And you're right, the only worst person to Kamala Harris in this campaign is Tim Waltz. And also, you know, people create the narrative that he wants to put tampons in the boys' restroom, which is true. So think how absurd that is, that he wants to spend government money to put women's supplies in the boys' restroom. I mean, he's absurd. He's untalented. And if the DNC really had any gall, or if they really cared about their people, they would have picked Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, the governor of Pennsylvania, in the most important state, but they didn't because they want to appease the pro-Palestinian crowd. So I hope that them choosing Tim Waltz is the nail in the coffin of the Kamala Harris campaign.
Yeah, I think you might be right. If she's not the nail in the coffin, I think he might be. Look, former President Barack Obama, he's back in the spotlight trying to help out Kamala Harris, and this time he decided to rap for an audience.
Now notice my palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy, vomit on my sweater already, mom's spaghetti. I'm nervous, but on the surface I look calm and ready to drop bombs, but I keep on forgetting.
Alex, what is he doing?
Well, you know, you have to give it up to Barack Obama. I don't like his politics, but he is a talented orator, and that's why he won in 2008 and 2016. But when you really look at that, you know, a lot of people said that Vivek Ramaswamy was copying Barack Obama, but Barack Obama copied that same exact thing that Vivek Ramaswamy already did when he was campaigning to be the nominee in the Republican Party. So it's crazy how all these politicians steal from each other. And, you know, Barack Obama, him saying that, I actually kind of enjoyed that clip because it was kind of funny. He's in Detroit, but even Barack Obama cannot do enough to save Kamala Harris's campaign. I just think it's too little too late. And that video, it's funny. I have to give that. I mean, Gabriella, you in Australia, you have to see that our ex-president is up there rapping Eminem lines. You might need to be a little worried about the state of America, but at least you guys probably find us entertaining.
They're doing anything they can. Well, Donald Trump is the brilliant entertainer, so Barack Obama, I suppose, is trying to step things up. But look, Donald Trump has opened up about the shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania. Here he is.
And my faith took on new meaning on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, where I was knocked to the ground, essentially, by what seemed like a supernatural hand. And I would like to think that God saved me for a purpose, and that's to make our country greater than ever before.
I do think it's incredible to hear him speak about this. And, the left-wing media would just rather forget that those assassination attempts, ever happen. They don't really want to bring it up. So I think it's important that Donald Trump speaks about it.
It's incredibly important. I mean, it's been memory holds here in America. People aren't even really talking about that assassination attempt, especially on the left. And it's crazy that the rhetoric behind it was that he almost deserved it. You heard people in the mainstream media saying that he deserved it for the way that he spoke. So I don't know. It's a really sad state of affairs where a presidential candidate got shot and it's not talked about 24/7. And that's the case. And that's why I appreciate you guys talking about it, because what's sad is this is probably not going to be the last attempt. I think Donald Trump is in a very dangerous spot, especially if he wins. There's a lot of people that want to take him out. And whether you want to say it's a deep state, Secret Service conspiracy, I don't know if it's that, but it only takes one crazy person and a DEI trained Secret Service that's protecting him for him to be taken out. So I'm very worried that this is not the last time that Donald Trump potentially could be shot. And I hope that doesn't happen again.
Absolutely. And after those comments from Kamala Harris today, people are back on Twitter saying pray for Trump. Donald Trump is set to record an interview with podcasting giant Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan confirmed that Donald Trump will be joining him in his Austin studio, posting it on social media. Alex, what can we expect from this, and what impact do you think it's going to have on voters?
This will be the biggest podcast of the last 100 years, the biggest podcast of all time. I mean, I know podcasting is relatively new, but I'm just saying this is going to be the thing that wins the election for Donald Trump. Him and Joe Rogan speaking, in a non-organized, just improvisational speech, because every time that we hear Kamala speak, it's pre-approved questions. CNN and MSNBC, they edit the answers. With Donald Trump, you're not going to get that. Joe Rogan is considers himself a libertarian, considers himself right in the middle. So he's going to air whatever they film. So I think this could be what actually puts Donald Trump over the top. And it's going to be great. I can't imagine sitting there and talking to the president for 2 hours, and Joe Rogan's going to be talking about hunting elk and running up hills, and Joe Rogan is going to tell him about his time in Hollywood, and Trump's going to talk about his experiences. So it's just going to be two of the most popular people here in America getting together to have a long conversation. It's going to be entertaining, and I cannot wait to watch it this Friday.